of you will be taught by the mortgage industry that you can sell houses very quickly to BC buyers and, you'll hold a second mortgage and get payments over time. I really don't like that. I've only made the mistake of doing that twice. And I did it early on in my real estate career when I really needed the money. So what I did, instead of getting my $25,000 out of my houses, I got $10,000 now and $15,000 in a mortgage over 15 years. Those two little payments are $113 a month for 15 years. If I would have just had the patience to wait a couple more weeks, I would have had the $25,000 instead of $10,000, and I sure wouldn't be chasing people for $113 a month. One of the two mortgages gets 3 months behind consistently. We have to threaten foreclosure every 3 months to get our little checks. It's an accounting nightmare. It's just a whole lot cleaner to deal with buyers and be able to sell. So, with that said, how do you sell a house? What is the most important thing to get a house sold? Well, I gave you the answer earlier this morning. I kind of jumped ahead when I said the most important thing to sell in a house is kitchen and a bath. So see, the most important thing about selling a house comes back to fixing the house. Now, I had talked a little bit about kitchens this morning. I am a little bit different than Ron. I told you I spend $200 per linear foot, but what I do is I don't put in a 6-foot or 8-foot set of cabinets. I like to put in 10 to 12 feet minimum, providing my house is big enough to put that many in the kitchen. I don't make it so claustrophobic the woman can't get in there, but I really like to do a big run of cabinets. I always put all the appliances in the house. I know that most of my buyers don't have the money to buy a stove, refrigerator, and dishwasher, so I'm going to go ahead and provide them. A used stove and fridge runs me around $425 delivered from a used appliance company. I always buy the dishwasher brand new. That's $220. It's Sears. One of the other things we went back to is the bathroom situation. I told you when in doubt, throw it out. I have never saved a bathtub unless it is brand new, white or ivory, already looking like it's only a year or two old. Anytime the bathroom's a little bit iffy, I'm going to gut it completely out and redo everything. I talked to you about the jacuzzi tub being $599. My favorite is the beautiful white ceramic tile that are 6 inches high to put around with a hunter green diamond every 6th. I go ahead and spend the $6 a piece to put the green bull nose trim on my ceramic so that at that point in the game the bathroom is really looking top notch. Now, with that said, my average kitchen is running right around $3,000. My average bathroom's right around $2,500. So what have I spent? $5,500? Well, in return, I've raised the value of the house $12,000. So what you have to learn, and what I teach you at boot camp, is for every $1,000 you raise the price of your home, the payment is going up $5.65 right now. So you have to think that. If I went and put a new bath and new kitchen in this house, could I get somebody easily to spend $60 more a month? Well, yeah. Well, you just raised the price of your house $10,000. The payment's only going up $60. So you have to say to yourself, if I put a new kitchen and a new bath in here, would the lady force him to pay $60 more per month? Yes. So you have to realize you put 5 in, you get 10 out. Now, what else does that do in addition to raising the price up so you make more profit? What's the other benefit of doing the house up really pristine? Sells faster, absolutely. So if you, on average, could sell your 3 months earlier than you normally would, what are you paying on your mortgage, taxes, insurance, and heating costs for 90 days? Probably another $2,000 over the 90 days. So not only do you get 5 more, you save 2. Now, where is the big benefit of turning the house quicker? What profit margin have we not talked about? Holding costs? No, we just discussed that. Cost of funds. Future deals. Future deals. Future deals. Let's think about it. If you could take a house and turn it, and you perfect your system to the point that you could do just one extra deal a year because you're cutting your time down, what is that worth to you? Probably $30,000 for some of you. So if you end up, you just do the kitchen and bath, and that enables you to just do an extra house a year, that's an extra $30,000 to your profit bottom line, in addition to the holding cost savings, in addition to getting more for the house. See, one of the things I learned from Ron is he came to me about a year and a half ago, and he said, what makes you different than all the 70,000 students that have come through my Junker boot camp? And I said, I don't know. He said, you need to figure that out because you're the best at what you do. What makes you different than everybody? And I really didn't know the answer to that. So I spent 4 months on the weekends really analyzing my business over the first 6 years to really determine what makes Robin different than everyone else. And what I realized is I was able to turn $5,000 on a Visa card when I started into $625,000 in my first 18 months. And the reason I was able to do that is because I understood the time value of money of getting it out, getting it done, getting the money back, and then putting it back out again. So the faster you get the deal done and get the house renovated, the faster you get your money back in your bank account, which means you can find more deals and get it back out on the street. And just to give you an idea, as a rule of thumb, my first year in the business, I did 6 deals. My second year in the business, I did 17. The third year in the business, when I actually listened to Ray Rock and Ron and went out and actually got over the hurdle and started asking people to borrow money, when the private money entered my life, when I got $1 million of capital lined up from Brookview Capital, that year I did 50 deals. 3 years into it. That's because money entered and I understood I got to get it out and get it back, get it out, get it back, get it out and get it back. So that's one of the things I really want to impress on you. No matter what you do in the real estate business, you really have to understand the time is money concept. And that's why my courses were developed, is to make you understand that and how to replicate the $5,000 off your Visa to $625,000 in wealth very quickly. That's the most important thing I can leave with you, is you really got to understand that. That's how you become financially free, is to get your deals out and get them back to you and get them sold. With that said, I need to leave you with a thought, because I have about 20 minutes left. One of the biggest benefits to my life is to get to meet people who really want to do something with themselves. And last August, I had the pleasure of going to Springfield, Ohio, which is where Ron's son-in-law is. And I think he probably kidded around about Mike. So I go into Springfield to speak one night to 40 people. And I typically don't do it unless there's a couple hundred students. But they had begged me to come because they've never had a national speaker. So I said, all right, I'll go. And I went there one night to a bunch of funny-duddy landlords who were in a bad mood. So they were trying to make my life miserable. But before the meeting started, it was very critical, because I went to dinner with the president of the real estate group, and he said, I had a really bad day today. And I said, why are you down, Don? And he said, well, my best friend got fired today. And I said, well, in Ron's world, that's a good thing, right? I mean, some of you are hoping that you go home, and that's what's going to happen. So I said, well, why is it so bad? He said, Robin, you don't understand. He lived his life to go to work. I said, I don't understand that. And he said, no, you have to understand. A year and a half ago, he was at work on an assembly line at Ohio Stamping, and a 700-pound coil was being slid down the manufacturing floor, and it came unhooked, and it crushed him. And it cut off his leg and 30% of his arm muscle under here. He said, my friend Robert actually died that day on the operating table twice. He said it took 23 pints of blood, and they brought him back to life. And he said, this happened a little over a year ago, and all Robert has ever wanted to do is go back to work, to have his old life back. He said, make a long story short, he was back to work for about a month. They had nothing for him to do in manufacturing because he's in a wheelchair. They wheeled him out under this big tree and left him sit in the parking lot in 85-degree heat until he passed out of the wheelchair. 2 days ago. I said, man, that's brutal. They said, well, they picked him up and took him to the emergency room. They sent him home. He was too sick to call in sick, and they fired him today. Not a nice place to work, huh? So he said, I'm really afraid he'll do something. I said, well, what do you think? And he said, I'm really afraid he'll commit suicide. What I realized at that minute was I have a gift to help people who want to be helped. And I said to myself, sometimes when one door closes, another one will open. So I called Robert on the phone from his friend's cell phone, and I said, you don't know me from Adam, but do you ever believe in fate? And he said, yeah, maybe. I said, do you have the strength to come to a meeting for an hour and a half tonight and just trust somebody? He said, all right, maybe. I said, okay, your friend will come pick you up. I delivered the same speech to Robert's class that I have just given to you. Robert sat there that night and absorbed everything I had to say and stepped back and said, I got nothing to lose. Robert made $17,000 a year at that factory with a 6th grade education. After after the meeting was over, I said, do you think that some of the things I just taught you, maybe you could do? He said, well, I don't know, but I'd like to try. I flew Robert to my boot camp for 5 days back in December. I have never let a student come for free because I believe in giving it away means you lost the value of it. But I paid for his plane ticket, and he came to my boot camp and stayed at my home and attended the 5 days. After it was all said and done and it was over, after meeting all my friends and the people that help me teach and the faculty that I bring in and Ron LeGrand and some of the others, he looked me in the eyes and he said, I can do this. I said, I told you, when one door closes, another one opens. Now, one thing I know about Robert Rice, he's not a quitter. If he was a quitter, he'd have died that day on the table. So with that said, he flew home to Springfield, Ohio, high as a kite. He could have probably flown with his own arms on the way home. He got home, and about a week and a half later, Robert Rice calls me up, and he says, I got one, I think. Could you help me? And I said, sure I can. I said, tell me the numbers, Robert. Calm down. He says, the bank's asking $17,500. I said, well, that's pretty good. I said, how much does it need in work? He said, think about $25,000. And I said, well, you're going to have to get a contractor. He said, I got one. I said, you sure he's any good? He said, yeah, I'm sure. He looked at it, and he said he can do it for $25,000. I said, make him write it down on a binding contract. He said, I used your numbers from the course, all your repair costs. I said, that's good. I said, now what it's worth? And this is where I thought he was going to tell me 40. Because if any of you ever been to Springfield, Ohio, it is by far the second ugliest city in the country, right next to Waterbury. So he said, no, I think it's worth 70. But that's the big question mark, isn't it? He had no access to the MLS, no idea about comps, has never bought a house before, so we had to go from there. So lucky enough, I had an advanced boot camp graduate in Springfield. So I called Ken Neal up, and some of you know him, and I said, Ken, I need you to go do me a favor and go over and look at this house. And he said, no problem, Robin, I'll do it. Ken calls me from the house and says, why don't you call Robert Rice up and tell him I'll give him $5,000 for the deal. Now, I know Ken Neal. He's greedy. So at that point in the game, the numbers were right. So, Robert, I called him back. I said, you're in. He said, okay, I got a big issue. I said, what's that? He said, I don't have any money. I said, I knew that. He said, will you split the deal with me? I said, all right, I'll do that. Now, I took a leap of faith that day. I had never seen the house. I sent a check to the closing. We put it in trust with my corporation as the beneficiary. I said to him, Robert, you're going to go ahead and rehab it. I'm going to pay all the bills. When it's sold, I will cut you a check. I said, okay, that's great. Now, I called the contractor and proceed to explain to this kid how he is not going to take advantage of my little buddy. He says, no, I know who you are. I said, you do? He said, yeah, I got a question for you. I said, what's that? He says, are there multiple deals in this? I said, if you're any good. He said, he doesn't shut up about this guy named Tom that he met. I said, yeah, that's my lead man. I said, if you step to the plate and become a Tom, I said, this will be deal after deal after deal. At the end of the 6 weeks, house was done. Robert ended up selling the house to a guy who worked with him at the factory who was a single dad with 4 kids. House payments were $550 a month. 4-bedroom, 1.5 bath with a garage in Springfield. Now, Robert went to the closing having no idea what was going on, right? So all the paperwork is done, and they overnight all the documents and the check back to me because I'm the beneficiary of the trust, so I'm getting the money. So Robert doesn't ask me a word. So I cut him a check. I overnight it back. So the next day, he gets an airborne envelope at his house. He calls me up crying on the phone. Oh, my God, it was as much as I make in a year. I said, Robert, you understand the company did not win. You are winning now. Now, a week and a half after that, Robert calls me up. I got another. I said, I'm psyched. Tell me how much. He said, they don't want anything for the house. I think it's one of them pretty house deals, but it's ugly. Now, mind you, he's never been to anything Ron has done. He has no idea, just a little bit that Charlie Franson has told him. And I said, okay, Robert. I said, they have to want something for the house. Nope. It's ugly. But he wants to give it to me for nothing. I said, Robert, something ain't right. I said, how much does he owe? Nothing. But he's going to get $10,000. I said, then Robert, the price is $10,000. No. He said, you don't understand. It had a fire. Bad one. I said, now wait. Don't start running before you walk. He said, no. Lonnie's already looked at it. He's ready to start. He said, the repairs are $36,000. I said, okay. I said, let's get back to the $10,000 the seller needs. He said, no, you don't understand. When a house catches fire in Springfield, the insurance money comes and the city takes $10,000 of it. All he wants is somebody to fix the house up so he can get his $10,000 from the city. He's willing to give it to us for the back due taxes. I said, well, how much is that? He said, $401. I said, I think this is good. I said, now, Robert, how much is it worth? He said, more than the other. It's nicer. I said, Robert, go for it. Robert's 95% through his second deal. This has all been since December. You know, the other house he did, he fell twice on the ice. Ended up with a concussion from the sidewalk as he bounced down it one February day. But I love that little guy. All 500 pounds of him. So you have to understand, Robert's my hero. Because he didn't quit. Now, I have one final question for you as I get ready to stop. If my friend Robert Rice, with no right leg, no muscle under here, beaten down little guy with a 6th grade education with no formal training except my 5-day event, can do this and end up turning his life around, going from making $17,000 to probably somewhere around $80,000 or $90,000 this year in his first year. Never been to this great event that you guys all have the privilege of sitting in. Can do this. Can I ask you, what's your excuse? I have dead silence. With that, I leave you with Robert. Every time you walk out this door and you think you're having a not so great day and life stinks for you, I want you to think about my buddy and the smile on his face as he goes through them smelly houses trying to step over the dead dogs and all the trash and get around them with one leg. Try to go up and down a flight of stairs hoping that the wooden leg works. You know, he's never going to give up. All you need to do is let a little bit of Robert Rice grow inside of you, and it ended up you'll be making $250,000, $500,000, $1 million just as soon as you choose to let it come into your life. And with that said, then I need to get done. So I appreciate all that you've done and been here with me tonight and the laughs that you've been able to give me. So good night, and I believe Bo will be up here in about 15, 20 minutes. And have a night.
Okay, we're going to talk about the purchase and sales agreement. I've got limited time, so I'm going to speak in 50, 60 minutes, words a second with spurts up to probably 100. In that packet that was handed out, there should be a purchase and sales agreement, and there's not one in mine. Yeah, what page is it on in the book? Teach me to leave mine laying out there. 235, okay. That's selling a junker. I got to find one for, I'm going to go through buying first. Forms scare a lot of people. I remember when I first started, the first house I bought, I paid $12,500. But when I first got started, the first house I bought, I was scared to death. I paid $12,500 for the house. Not deposit, that's what I paid for the house. I sat down on the back porch with the guy to fill out the contract. I was scared to death. I was so frightened that I literally had to put my hand on top of my other hand to sign my signature, because I didn't know where I was going to get $12,500 to buy the house. But I learned these contracts are not intimidating. Once you learn them, you become familiar with them, they're actually a good friend, because you can put yourself in a good position. Okay, now we're doing buying right now. I'm going to take a few minutes to go through the purchase and sales agreement to buy. And then when I get through, I will go through the purchase sales agreement to sell. So don't confuse it. Right now we are just buying. Okay, the buyer, that will be you, your corporation. How are you going to take title? In a land trust. But you can still put down your name or your corporation, whoever's going to be the beneficiary of the trust. This is not public record. This is strictly between you and the buyer, and if you go to a title company, a closing company. And the seller, who is selling you the house. I had somebody sitting right down here one time that said, well, what's the seller's name? And I said, it's the person selling you the house. He said, I understand that. What's his name? And I felt like I was doing an Abbott and Costello, who's on first. Because we're going around and around. So if you have to write something right now, write Joe Seller. That's who's selling you the house. Okay, the property is located in whichever county. You do not have to put the legal description on here. If you do not have the exact legal description or it's lengthy, leave it off. There is a big difference between the house on Lot 8, Block 5, than Lot 5, Block 8. If you don't have it exact, you're going to be buying the wrong house. So right here on legal description, you can leave that blank if you have to. Number 5 on this overhead projection is the address of their property. You do need that, the street address, including the zip code. The total purchase price, paragraph 1. That's number 6 through 15 on here. Paragraph 1 is the total purchase price that you are paying for the house. Line 1A is the binder you're given. How much binder are you typically going to give? $10. Can you buy a $100,000, $200,000 house for $10 binder? You can. I hardly ever give more than that. If you're dealing with a realtor, you are going to end up giving more. But if you're dealing with a seller, in 99% of the time, $10 is all you have to put out. That binder goes on 1A. Your first inclination is going to be put the full price on 1A. I have done that when I started out many times. The total purchase prices, we'll get to that in a minute, but the line 1A, keep in mind, that is the binder deposit that you're going to put down. 1B is any additional binder, don't worry about it. 1C is the balance due at closing. If you're buying cash and you're going to bring balance due at closing, the amount you're going to bring to closing will go on there. So 1C will be used if you are going to bring money to closing from a hard money lender. You can use 1C or 1D for the money that you're going to bring to closing when you're buying all cash. 1E, don't worry about it. F, don't worry about it. G will be used if you are getting a house subject to, if you're getting the deed. 1G says existing mortgage balance encumbering the property to take the subject by the buyer approximately. I write out after that word approximately, not to exceed. Not, that gives me an out if they told me approximately $80,000 mortgage. I write it right out here. And it turns out to be 83. 83 is approximately 80,000. But if you put not to exceed 80,000, then you can back out or tell the seller you're going to have to bring $3,000 to closing. And then 1H, the total purchase price. If you're paying cash for it, you want to mark exactly and put the full price over here. If you're getting the property subject to, you want to mark approximately and write the total up here. 15 has to add up. All those numbers 6 through 14 have to total what's on line 15. Everybody clear on that? After the word approximately, you write not to exceed after the word approximately on that line. Page 225. No, it'd be on line 30,000. This is a cash when you're buying a junk or all cash on page 225. If you're paying all cash, you want to mark exactly the way Ryan has it here, $30,000. I'm saying on that line 1G is if you're getting the deed, then you write not to exceed. Everybody clear on that difference? One's when you're doing cash exactly. The other one is when you're getting the deed, it's approximately not to exceed.
Bo?
Yes.
on 1G, should you not put strike out to be assumed and strike in, put in there subject to?
Okay, Joe's question was 1G, and the one Ron has written out here, handed out, says to be taken subject to. In the book, you would strike out assume and write taken subject to. The one we handed out already has it struck out for you. On 1G, when you're getting a property subject to, on the one we handed out, it says existing mortgage balance and covering the property to be taken subject to by a buyer, approximately, and you write in not to exceed. In the book, it has to be assumed by a buyer. You want to, on page 225, you want to X out assumed and write taken subject to. Thank you, Joe. Paragraph 2 is for financing when you are selling to a cash buyer. Paragraph 2 is when you're selling to a cash buyer. We're not going to worry about that now because we're buying. Paragraph 3, the closing cost that the buyer will pay and that the seller will pay is paragraph 4. It is negotiable. How many realtors do we have in the room? They'll back me up on this. It is negotiable. Closing costs, unless it's getting an FHA or VA loan, all the closing costs are negotiable. I always prefer to do them 50-50. When I'm the buyer, the seller pays, and when I'm the seller, the buyer pays. That's 50-50, isn't it? But it's whatever you agree to. If you are buying cash, you want the seller to pay some of the closing cost. If you're going to take over his loan subject to, and you are not giving him any cash, then you're going to probably pay all the closing cost. So it's whatever you and the seller negotiate. It is totally negotiable. I have written down before, buyer will pay 1/2 closing costs, seller will pay 1/2 closing costs. Title companies hate that, but they deal with it. Anybody in here from Oregon or Seattle? You got to be careful what I'm fixing to say, because up in your state, I've been told an appraisal will cost about $1,000. Most area, not an appraisal, a survey. Yeah, no survey. Yeah, you see, I've been charged. Survey costs about $1,000. I've been told. I don't know that for a fact, but most areas, a survey is going to cost you about $250 to $350. So I prefer to pay the survey, the WDO, the appraisal, so I can pick who I want for the appraiser. Those are 3 of the items that I prefer to pay, and I check. I will pay the appraisal, I will pay the WDO, and I will pay the survey. I mean, not survey, yeah, survey, except for in Oregon. Now, I will take and check. Now, Joe, you're buying this house. I mean, you're selling me the house. Joe, the house does have clear title, doesn't it? Yes. You would be willing to insure that, wouldn't you? So Joe will pay title insurance. He just agreed to pay, $600-800, which is almost the total of all 3 that I'm paying. But you go through and check. The ones Ron has checked in the book, the buyer, that is us, are paying a recording fee and the WDO. The seller will pay the transfer fee, transfer tax, title insurance fee, and satisfaction of and recording fee. Those are 3 heavy-duty items. You want to try to put all the heavy-duty items on the other side. Page 225. Okay, paragraph 5 basically says, yes. Okay, the heavy-duty ones is the title insurance, transfer fee, are the 2 biggest ones. And your title insurance and transfer fee are 2 heavy ones. Now, just there are going to be a ton of little junk fees, couriers, and you can actually write out the seller will pay any other closing cost, or the seller will pay any unassigned closing cost. Okay. His question was the recording fees checked for buyer and seller. They're going to record a satisfaction of one loan and record a new loan. The buyer's going to pay for the recording of the new loan. That's going to be more than the satisfaction of the existing loan. That's why it's checked twice. Payment of expenses, paragraph 5, basically says that if the buyer backs out or cannot perform, he will pay any cost that you incur or that the seller incurs. And if the seller backs out, he will have to pay any cost that you have incurred. So if you have already paid for the appraisal and the WDO and the seller backs out, you can get your money back. Paragraph 6, prorations. I know I'm doing 2 of them. I don't want to confuse you. But the one in the book is cash. We leave that in. That simply states that the taxes and insurance will be prorated up through the day of closing. Any condominium fees also. If you are buying it subject to, you want to cross out paragraph 6 because you're going to take the escrow with the house. Everybody clear on that? If you're buying cash, you want to prorate the taxes and insurance. If you're getting the deed subject to, you are going to mark out proration so that the escrow stays with the house. That means the taxes and insurance that the seller has paid, you get. So just simply making your notes, if you are getting a deed subject to, cross out paragraph 6. If you're buying it cash, leave it in. I'm sorry? That's assuming there is an escrow. If there's not a taxes and insurance, this is a moot point. Okay, paragraph 7. Title evidence. Within 5 days after acceptance, the seller will provide to the buyer evidence of clear title. You can write in at closing in there, in that little blank. Write the words at closing. That way, well, you're buying now. Leave it in. Put 5 days. Within 5 days, he's going to have to provide to you title evidence. Survey. Notice Ron left it blank in the book. Since you are the seller, you're the buyer, and you've checked that you're paying for the survey, you may choose not to get one. Hold on a second. The houses that are in platted neighborhoods that have been there for years and there are no encroachments on the property, there ordinarily is no need for a survey. If you've got a house that has a garage built right on the property line, you may want to get a survey to find out. I have bought a house that had a fence that was 2 foot over on our property. I did not get a survey. I didn't know it until we went to sell, and they got a new survey. It was fixed simply by the seller signing an affidavit that he didn't care. So I would suggest if it's in a platted neighborhood that's been there for years, there's nothing that could be on the neighbor's property or it could be on your property, why get a survey? You had a question back there? Okay. And if you notice at the end of paragraph 8, it says no survey required. Paragraph 9, WDO, Wood Destroying Organism Report. If you live in Florida, there's always rotten wood. In most states, there tends to be some type of rotten wood, whether it's termite damage. This paragraph basically states that if you find rotten wood, you as the buyer have the right to back out unless the seller does repairs up to 1% of the sales price. I bought a house one time for $24,000, and the reason I did 24 instead of 25 because we teach you to buy in round numbers. I found out there was 4 heirs and they could divide 4 into 25 easier than they could divide 4 into 25. And they each had a firm $6,000 fixed in their mind. Matter of fact, when I was talking to them, I could see them spending the money. And then I got a WDO, an old wooden house. I knew it had termites. And I called the lady that was doing the negotiating for them up and said, we've got a problem. And I shut up. Seemed like a long pause. And she says, what's the problem? I said, there's termites in the house. And she said, what are we going to do? And I said, I'm a good guy. I put on my white hat. I'm a good guy. If you will pay to termite treat the house, I will do all the repairs and keep it going. Well, I would have done both, but I'm not going to tell her that. It's like Wade was talking, we don't want the war to be fair. We want to win. We're not supposed to do the homework for the seller when we're the buyer, or for the buyer when we're the seller. I said, if you will if you will termite treat the house, I will do all the repairs. She jumped on like, yeah, okay, sounds good. Cost her $850 to termite treat the house. They had to go around, bore holes all the way around the block bottom, spray the poison in it, and go back and patch the block. And I told them, don't worry about painting, I'm going to paint it anyway. Good guy, my white hat got bigger. So it cost me about $75 to do the wood repair. But I came off the good guy. Matter of fact, I used to be partners with Doug Massio sitting about 4 rows back there. We used to call this our 1% rule. We were negotiating to buy a house one time, and we were paying, $12,000 for the house. And I said, you want to invoke the 1% rule? He said, for $120, forget it. But you can save yourself a ton of money by invoking this. That's the WDO paragraph. Title examination and time of closing. Ron's got in the book, he left it blank. It's whatever you agree. If I'm buying from Joe and I'm buying cash, I'll put down here we're going to close within 30 days or whatever we agree on. There are 3 blanks on there. Discard the 3rd blank. Forget about it. The other 2 blanks, you're going to close owner before a target date. You'll close owner before May or June 30th, or you'll close 30 days from now. Which you use one or the other, not both. That's number, it was paragraph 10. I thought I had it on here. Yeah, paragraph 10 right here, 28 or 29. Owner before a date or within so many days, a certain amount of days after acceptance. Either or, it's not both. Either 30 days or a target date for closing. And it goes on to say that if there's any title defect, that the seller can back out or take the title as is. Paragraph 11 goes on to say that if the house is damaged by fire, you as the buyer can back out. That does not mean if you change your mind, go set the house on fire. That will get you out of the deal, but it's liable to get you 3 meals and a place to sleep. But if there is a fire, the buyer can back out unless the seller is willing to do the repairs up to 3% of the total purchase, of the total appraised value or assessed value. Paragraph 12. This is an excellent time to ask if there are any problems with the house. Mr. Seller, Joe, is there anything wrong with the house that I can't see? And he's supposed to tell me any, it's called latent defects. Anything, if the roof's leaking, I can't see it. If the foundation's cracking and I don't realize it. Joe, are there any problems with this house that I don't know about? And that's where he's supposed to list them. Paragraph 13. Is it occupancy? Who's living in the house? It says that you, as the buyer, will take possession of the house the day of closing unless you put another date in here. Everybody getting that? Shake your heads. Let me hear it rattle, because I know I see a lot of blank faces. Paragraph 14. Any personal property that's staying with the house goes on that line. Anything not mentioned. That's number 33 on here. Anything that is staying with the house is not mentioned. If you want to get the Thunderbird that's parked in the garage, if you want to get the riding lawnmower, now's the time to negotiate for it. Put it on paragraph 14. Any item specifically excluded goes on number 34 on here, the second line on paragraph 14. Any items specifically excluded. I had a house one time I was negotiating on, and the guy wanted to take the refrigerator, and I just, as a matter of point, wanted to get it. And he finally relented, and we got down to this, and he says, well, I want all the ceiling fans. And I says, okay, no problem, seller, to take all the ceiling fans. I didn't think he'd do it myself, Somebody in there taking all the ceiling fans down. But when I did the walkthrough before closing, every ceiling fan was taken down, had 2 wires sticking out of the roof, out of the ceiling. So anything that the seller wants to take needs to go in here. Paragraph 15 basically says whoever loses the court case pays attorney's fees. Paragraph 16. That's where the zoning goes on. Very important you check the zoning. That's number 35 and 36 on here. I bought a house, assumed it was zoned commercial. There was a main street, gas station. This is the first house behind the gas station. I assumed it was zoned residential. I went in, rehabbed it, got it ready to sell, sold it. The guy was getting it was an $80,000 house. He was putting $8,000 down, getting a 90% loan. I was getting all my money out of it. The appraiser called me up and said, "Bo, we got a problem." Or said, "Bo, I got something to tell you." I said, "What's that?" He said, "The house is zoned commercial." And I said, "Way to go! You know, commercial's worth more. I can up the price." He said, "No, I've actually got to lower the price because it's zoned commercial, grandfathered residential. That means that if it sits vacant for a year, it loses its residential status and it reverts to commercial. If it burns down, it cannot be rebuilt residential. It has to be rebuilt commercial. I got to lower the appraised value $5,000. About an hour later, the mortgage broker calls me up. And he said, I got bad news. And I said, "I've already heard." He said, "No, you heard the good news. Let me give you the bad news. The bad news is on a commercial loan, you only can get 80%. The guy does not have the other $8,000. He is going to back out if you don't take a second mortgage for $8,000 and forgive it for $1. Now, what am I going to do? I'm a new investor. I need the cash flow. I'm, panicking. Okay, I'll do it. So I had to forgive an $8,000 loan. Instead of I made $8,000 less on that house simply because I did not check the zoning. Had I checked the zoning going in, I would have known it and I could have structured my offer to sell it. The way you check zoning, you can have a title company check it. You can have an appraiser check it. It should. Yeah, I bought this one subject to. I didn't go through a closing. Her question was, how do you check title? Either title company. If you go through a closing the way we suggest you do it now, they're going to check title for you. But you need to know that beforehand. They'll check it. Remember, we've got 5 days to be furnished. If you know how to read your county website, you can trust it. If you understand what the RS2, SF2 or whatever, the zoning. Yeah, if you understand the terminology. 17 is used when you are making an offer through a realtor and you want to put pressure on the other party. Since we're dealing with the seller direct, don't worry about 17. Additional terms and conditions. That's anything that you and the seller agree to. Cash, you may not put anything on there. If you're buying it subject to, you want to put on there terms of the contract will survive the closing because you are going to keep making the payments after the closing. Anything that you and the seller agree on need to be put there.
If you're taking the property subject to, do you even need a purchase and sale agreement?
Good question. I'm glad you asked. Yes. You need a purchase and sales agreement. This is a meeting of the minds. If you do a tabletop closing where you do a closing at their house, this can be invaluable because they can't come back and claim you owe them more money. You've got your agreement right here. If you're going through a title company or an attorney for closing, they're going to require one of these so they know how to prepare the paperwork. You never want to close without a purchase and sales agreement. Even if you got a tabletop closing, I'll say it again. If you got a tabletop closing where you're doing a closing at mailboxes, etc., or wherever, the seller comes back a year from now and says, "Well, where's the rest of my money?" And you say, "What money?" He said, "Well, you promised me $5,000 more." If you don't have one of these to prove that you didn't promise it, and he wants to take you to court, you'll have a problem. If you got one of these, you just produce it and you say, "Hey, I don't owe you anything. It's right here in writing." So definitely want it. Paragraph 19, don't worry about it. That just ties the whole thing together. If I explain it, I have more blank slopes than I have now. Paragraph 20, the state that the property is in, not the one you live in, is what goes on there. And that's the state laws that determine it. Then the buyer signs it, the seller signs it. This does not have to be notarized. His question was, does it have to be notarized? It does not. The only thing that has to be notarized when something has to be recorded. And this does not have to be recorded. And then down below that, the seller acknowledges receipt of the $10. That's your receipt for giving him a check. And I suggest you always give him a check, not cash. That is the purchase and sales agreement to buy. Yes?
Some of the other classes I've been to have suggested that you should have subject to approval or subject to inspection. There's a weasel clause to get out of it.
Yeah.
I know if you have $10 down, it's not really.
That's exactly the reason we teach you, or one of the reasons we teach you $10. You don't need a weasel clause anymore.
Well, but I mean, how many? In my experience, I haven't really met many sellers that would accept $10 as earnest money. I mean, most of them seem to.
That's because you're afraid to ask them to. You are not picking you personally, because I used to be the same way.
Right.
That when I did buy that $12,000, when I give a $100 deposit, because I didn't always give 10. What you're afraid of, you kind of transmit to the other party. Mm-hmm. And if you're afraid he won't accept $10, he's going to read that in you, mm-hmm. and reject it. I told one of the girls at the fire station, her and her husband were buying a house, and I told them to give them $10. And they said, okay, and they did it, and the lady said, you weasel. Said, yeah, that's insulting, $10. But it's the way they presented it. They were afraid to say, well, we usually give $10. Is that okay? And just look down and keep going.
Well, yeah.
You don't say, well, $10 worth. You just say, on paragraph 1A, we normally give $10 binder. And I don't even, I just keep going down.
Uh-huh.
Company policy, yeah.
If you're afraid they're actually not going to cash the check, couldn't you also just have them sign a receipt and give them $10 cash?
You could if you don't have a check, but it's just better, and also for your CPA. When you get in this, you're going to have to start filing taxes, unfortunately. And your CPA needs to pick up every penny that's spent on that house, because it's a tax deduction. If you give cash, then you got a receipt instead of a check for him to pick up. It's just cleaner and easier with a check. If you don't have a checking account, then you have to. Okay, now let's sell it. We're selling this as a junker now. Your name, the buyer's name goes up top. That's page 235 in the book. 235, and then I forgot to flip in 226. 235. The buyer's name goes in the first blank. The seller name. Now, you're the seller, right? I suggest that you put in there owner of record, because you've taken title on a land trust. I have only one time in 10 years, and I learned this real early to start owner of record. One time in 10 years had somebody question owner of record, and that was yesterday. The mortgage company called and says, "You've got an owner of record. We need a name in there." And so I had to scratch in the trustee's name and send it to them. But I told them, I didn't say doofus, but I thought doofus, that says pull up the property appraiser's records, and whoever's on the record, you just put the name in there. But she wanted me to put it. Last deal I'm doing with them, by the way, they've been a pain. That's another story. This property is in the same. The address is the same. Now, this is where we get into the differences. I am selling this house. Who wants to be my buyer? Huey, where are you at? Okay, no, you can say right, Huey. You're my buyer. How much money am I wanting to get from Huey? I give Joe $10 when I was buying it. How much do I want to get from Huey? Okay, how much do you have, Huey? How much do you have, Huey? $35,000. $35,000, is that all? You can't give me, it's a ridiculous amount for a binder, but I'm not going to let him know that. Typically, they'll say they got $500, $1,000, $1,500, whatever. No matter what they say, you come back with, is that all? You want that much? That's all you want to put down on my $100,000 house? Yeah, I might be able to make that. Yeah, let me see. Can I work? Yeah, that'll work. You want to get as much as you can. I want it to sting Huey if he backs out. We're not getting into the lease option here. We're just selling on a junker because I don't have time to go through all the forms. But I want him, if he backs out, to lose something. So I want him tied to the property. In this case, in the book, Ron's got $500. I hardly ever do one for less than $1,000 now myself. The balance due at closing is the amount of money they are bringing to closing. Or if paragraph 1D, if they're getting a new loan from Nations Bank or Bank of America, it could go on 1D, the amount of the new loan. The total purchase price when you're selling it for cash or on lease option is going to be marked exactly, and then the total price you're getting for the property. I had a house one time when I used to do smaller houses. All I did, the first $150,000 house I did, I filled out the purchase and sales agreement, made a copy, give it to the guy. $150,000 I was selling the house for. I got about 3/4 of the way back home, and I thought, what did I write on there? Did I write 150 or did I write 50? I was driving down the road, literally pulling papers out, and I got out and I had $50,000. Talking about a U-turn in traffic, hauling back. I got back there and said, we got to fill out a new agreement. I made a mistake. He said, yeah, I was wondering how long it's going to take you to come back. So you can fix it. I mean, I guess he could have held me to it, but I'd been bad off. But I just went back and we filled out a new one and started over. Okay, application financing does not apply. We're selling for all cash in this junker. But if paragraph 2 is if you're selling to an end buyer, if Huey is going to go get a mortgage, that's where I put down that he's going to apply for a mortgage in a certain amount of days. And I want to make sure he goes to the mortgage broker in that amount of time to apply for the loan. He's going to really be pre-qualified before we ever fill this out. But he's going to make a full-blown application within 5 days or 10 days, whatever. Now we get back to the closing cost. The buyer will pay and the seller will pay. Huey, do you have life insurance?
Yes.
You buy life insurance, don't you? You buy car insurance. The house has a title and clear title, but you want to insure that title, don't you? Yes. So you'll buy title insurance. He's buying it now, right? See the difference in the way I negotiated? I sold him that he needed insurance on the title, so he should pay for his own insurance. And I still prefer to pay for the survey, the appraisal, and WDO. I want him to pay. Of course, he's going to pay for anything that has to do with the loan he's getting. Any loan origination, any broker fee or anything. Do I ever pay some of the costs for Huey if I've got a big payday coming on the back end? Yes, I will. And I've actually gone back and changed things to make the deal going through because the buyer could not borrow enough money. Okay, now we're selling this for all cash. Ron's got the payment of expenses there again. If the buyer backs out or seller backs out, they have to pay any expenses incurred by the other party. Paragraph 6, Ron's got the prorations marked out. I don't know why he's got it marked out because I prefer personally, Huey, I won't pay the taxes up to the day of closing and you take the taxes from that day on. My insurance is going to be canceled at closing. You got to get new insurance. And then title evidence, I got 5 days. I write in the words at closing on paragraph 7. I will furnish title insurance, clear title for you at closing, Huey. Yeah,
my question was regarding on this from the sale. If we're selling, I see we have a lot of paragraphs we're striking.
Right.
For example, and on this example, if we're like software savvy and we want to go in and just basically delete those paragraphs from our software version and print it out that way, is that acceptable?
You can. Some of them you can delete out. I don't like to delete them out, all of them, because like the prorations or the WDO where we're going to strike out paragraph 9, I'd rather that be in there and be struck out so Huey can't come back and say, well, I didn't know that I could get a termite report.
Okay.
Because some of the things you strike out, you want him to see them and then strike them out. So
also
that
the negotiating ploy, I guess.
Yeah, so that he knows that he's not getting that protection.
Okay.
So I would prefer to leave him in. This is a good contract that Ron has created from the Florida Realtors, and he's changed it to make it good for us. So I wouldn't go changing a whole lot of text on it.
Okay. And then I guess the only other thing is, would you put like an NA, or you just go back?
Just X out.
Cross it out, and that's acceptable.
Just cross out.
Okay.
Anytime you cross something out, write something in, other than filling in a blank, it should be initialed. Okay, WDO is crossed out. Time of closing, we're back, page 226. It depends on how long you are giving them to close. Huey, how long is it going to take you to close?
Probably about 30 days.
Okay, we put in 30 days. One of the middle two blanks, either owner before June 22nd, or whatever day, 21st, or 30 days. One or the other, not both. There again, paragraph 11 is the same. Paragraph 12, if there's anything wrong, I am supposed to disclose it to Huey. I don't suggest that you hide anything. Paragraph 13, the house is vacant, Huey. You will have it at closing. 14, any personal property that Huey's getting extra. If I'm selling to an end buyer, Huey's going down to Nations Bank. I make Huey feel good. I'll write in there that Huey, I'm going to leave the water heater in. Huey, I'm going to leave that air conditioning and air handler in, air conditioning estate. All these things to make him warm and fuzzy that he's getting extra, that he's going to get anyway. Good question. Should you have somebody in your state, look, these work in almost all 50 states. There are a few little idiosyncrasies. I would suggest you have an attorney or a title company, preferably attorney in your area, look at them to give them the stamp of approval. They've been tested in all 50 states, and I believe they're very minor changes, if any. There may be a few local or nothing major.
You're not going to take the ceiling fans out of there, are you?
Yeah, Huey, I'm going to take out the ceiling fans. Okay, 15 says again, if I back out, Huey can get his money and sue me. Paragraph 17 is the zoning. Paragraph 18, any additional terms between Huey and I, anything that we're agreeing to, will go in paragraph 18. 19, don't worry about it. 20, there again the state law. We sign it and we date it. And then I sign acknowledging the acceptance of the $500 from Huey. That is the contract to sell for all cash.